All right, it's time for Geek Out, you Darrisons.
Geek out.
Hey, welcome to another Someone Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
This week we have an interview, as you can imagine.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Us? An interview?
With Justin Jordan.
Oh, yeah, baby.
He's back. Talking about his book, Death of Love, which he does with Donald DeLay, out in comic book stores everywhere on Valentine's Day, which is February 14th. And
How fitting.
yes, and on Comixology. Retailers, you have until the Monday that after this thing posts to pre-order. But you know what? Let's let Justin talk about it. And coming back on the show, we've got Justin Jordan. He's I'm trying to think. The last time he was here, he was talking Luther Strode and and Spread. Those books, I mean, they're a deluxe edition of all of Luther Strode just came out, the last Spread trade comes out in March. But really, he's here to talk about his new Image comic series, Death of Love, which comes out on Valentine's Day. It's very, serendipitous for all of us. And he's also got the family trade with Image Comics. The fourth issue of that is out today when this thing drops. And Justin, I feel like you've also got an upcoming DC book, and you're still doing Monsters Unleashed over at Marvel.
Yes, I've got two upcoming DC books. I'm doing Sideways with Kenneth Rocafort and Dan DiDio, and I'm doing Curse of Brimstone with Philip Tan. And then, yes, Monsters Unleashed is coming out now, I think, probably. Nobody tells me when anything's out. I haven't gotten any comps for it, but I think the first issue has come out. So,
damn. Well, I guess. First off, welcome back, and thanks again for coming back on the show, Justin. I don't know if you recall, but you were on my Packed to the Rafters panel at Baltimore back in September.
I do.
So,
thanks for having me back again.
Yeah, no problem at all. I promise we get more listeners than we did at that convention. Ooh. But the so yeah, Death of Love, I feel like is. It's kind of weird to call it this, but I feel like it's the most lighthearted and fun book I've read coming from you. But at the same time, there's all manner of blood and dismemberment at the same time. So that but yeah. So where did Death of Love all kind of come from?
So one day I had this kind of idle thought on Facebook, which if anybody follows me on Facebook, which I know several of you do, I think I just post whatever random crap floats through my head periodically, and I had just had this image of this guy going after a bunch of cupids, or cupidae as they have become called in the book, with a chainsaw. And so Donald DeLay, who's the artist on that, actually did it as his warm-up sketch for the day, and I said, that's pretty awesome, we should do a book. And now we have.
Nice. Is all from and I feel like is it basically the that spread that kicks off the miniseries?
It is. The original version of it was different, but it is that same basic image because we redesigned Philo, the main character, some. He looks different than that dude looked, and we kind of honed what the cupidae looked like. But yeah, that's the basic image.
Would you say so? Philo, the main character of this, down on his luck, suddenly gains the ability to see cupidae in a drunken binge and decides to take the war, to the winged ones. Would you say Philo is kind of the most selfish or most like reprehensible protagonist that you've written to date?
Yeah, probably. There's some argument. I guess maybe some of the characters in the crossed stuff I did were probably worse. But yeah, Philo's a jackass, which is explicitly so in the book. Like his best friend's like, dude, what are you doing? And he continues to be so through most of the book. There's kind of a redemptive arc for him. But yeah, he's the biggest jerk of a character I think I've probably ever actually written, which hopefully comes off as funny and not annoying.
Well, and I think it certainly does in this debut issue. We've all know guys like Philo, the nice guy that's like, oh, if I do X, X, and X, this chick will totally be into me. Like she'll totally see through all the bullshit. And I on one hand that makes him reprehensible. On the other hand, we all know that guy. A lot of us probably have friends that are that guy, and just watching him kind of stumble, and he has to take care of a cat named Bob Dylan. Now,
yeah.
also, cats play you've got Bob Dylan in Death of Love. Cats play a pretty prominent role in Family Trade. What is it about the feline persuasion that you find so intriguing as a storyteller, Justin?
Well, clearly cats are amazing. No, I 3 years ago, before in October, I found a kitten, and I was intending only to get her fixed up, and then I was not intending to have a cat. I like cats, but by the time I got to the vets, I had a cat, so I was like, "Oh, baby," and she has been one of the better life choices that I've made in the ever. So my work has gotten much more cat intensive, and her name, despite being her, is Tom Waits, which is why if you read John Flood, there's an Arlo Guthrie cat in there, and now we have a Bob Dylan. So it's my pattern of naming cats after male singers. But yeah, like in Family Trade and stuff, it was just it's really, I would like to tell you there's a grand creative reason, but it's basically everybody on the creative team likes cats. We all have or had cats. One of the Morgan's cat passed away a while ago, and so we're like, what would be cool? Smart ass cats that everybody but the protagonist can understand when they talk. So there you go, cats.
I mean, every issue of the Family Trade, you've kind of got that little, Morgan draws the very gorgeous, like little feline thing that you've got in every single thing there. And yeah, so will we see Bob Dylan over the course of Death of Love?
No, Bob Dylan does not actually make an appearance in Death of Love, which I was just thinking about today. Actually, we never actually get to see Zoe's apartment. So we never actually meet Bob Dylan. But rest assured, behind the scenes, he makes it through the entire series perfectly fine.
Despite all the death and dismemberment around him.
Indeed. I only death and dismember humans and adorable baby-looking flying things. Animals are off limits.
So when we see Philo, obviously he is not in the best place romantically, which I presume carries over this entire crusade. How do the cupidae kind of, without giving the game away, if I'm kind of trying to dance around this a bit, how do the cupidae see Philo?
Well, they don't give a shit about Philo at all until Philo sees them, and he decides that he is going to interrogate one to find out why he isn't lucky in love, and things go really downhill from there. So yeah, that's kind of his thing, is that he thinks of himself as like a forever alone kind of guy, and he's bitter about it. So he's found somebody that's clearly responsible, or at least so he thinks. So he decides that he is going to ask them some questions, and that goes just as well as you would think it does.
Is this the most comedic book that you've written to date? I
think so. I think there's an undercurrent of comedy in most of my books, just because, as you mentioned, this is probably one of the more lighthearted of my books, and that's kind of the deal, right? Is that I usually throw in comedy both because I have a sense of humor, and also because the stuff I tend to write is so unrelentingly grim that it would just be wall to wall grim if I didn't have some humor in it. I think you need to kind of cut the grim with humor sometimes to make the grim actually work. I think otherwise people get overwhelmed. So yeah, this book is the first straight up comedy I've ever done, except for Rafer Roberts and I have done those Thanos and Darkseid mini comics, Thanos and Darkseid Carpool Buddies of Doom, which are available free online if you want to Google them. And they're pretty funny, I think, too. It's always hard to judge your own work, but people have responded well to those. But in terms of a long form thing, yeah, it's the first comedy work that I've done.
To kind of flip the script a bit, you mentioned that you have written very dark and grim stuff. Your other comic, Spread, ends with issue 25. It's basically, it's all about the end of the world, very kind of Thing and Cronenbergian, and a little Werewolf and Cub as well. What is it about that? One, how does it feel kind of closing out that series? And two, what was it about, what made you want to write something that kind of dark and unrelenting?
I mean, it's weird to be finishing up a series. It's good to get to actually end a series on your own terms, because we did with Luther Strode and we are with this, but like oftentimes, more often than not, you end up, the sales just aren't there and you kind of have to end it whenever, whereas we've actually gotten to the book's natural endpoint with it, which is nice. I'm actually in this position right now where like I actually wrote the last script for it I don't know, 7 or 8 months ago now. So I'm going through actually producing the last issues and that kind of stuff, and it's like, it's weird because there's this sort of like, yeah, I'm finished when you write that script, but then there's still all this other work to do, and you're like, is it finished yet? Like, it's not like I want it to be done, but I want it to be done, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Because you've kind of like, no, I just got to shepherd this through and get it on the shelves and hope people like it.
Yeah.
As to why I did that, I don't know. I couldn't tell you why I gravitate to that kind of stuff. I'm not a particularly grim and dark person in real life, which might be it. I have found that it's been my experience in life, and it's probably not a universal rule, but in my experience, people that write horror books are the most cheerful and pleasant people that you ever meet, whereas people that do comedy, as a rule, are like kind of grim and messed up in their real lives. So I don't know if there's some sort of like you just gravitate to whatever the opposite of what your life is actually like involved, or what comes of that. Specifically, though, I've always really loved post-apocalyptic stuff, and I have a thing for Lone Wolf and Cub, which was for sure an inspiration for the book. And of course, I love John Carpenter's The Thing, so I decided to kind of glom all that stuff together, and it would be interesting to kind of work through a post-apocalyptic world on my own terms. There was stuff that interested me that you don't often see, and it depends on the post-apocalyptic that you're getting. But I wanted to kind of explore a different kind of apocalypse. Like, and I'm spoiling my own book here. As you eventually learn in Spread, the apocalypse is sort of limited to North America. So it was it's kind of curious to kind of explore those ideas and see how people would react to this kind of radical world change. And it's been great fun. And then 25 issues is a good run for an indie book. That's, the longest run I've had on any one title actually as yet. So I'm pleased with it.
That's right, because Luther Strode ran for 18 across all 3 miniseries.
Did.
I mean, and you guys had just put out the deluxe hardcover. Can we expect something? I mean, I know that you're about to put out Trade 5 for Spread. Can we expect something similar in the hardcover form for Spread?
Maybe. Spread has been one of those things where it sells well in trades. It has not sold the way that Luther Strode has in trades, which is not so much a criticism of Spread as it is the just weird, persistent success of Luther Strode, which still sells. Each of those trades still sells a couple hundred copies a month, and we've sold like 20-odd thousand of the first trade at full price. Which is not necessarily great shakes if you're Rick Remender, but I am not. So over the years, it's been a lot of stuff, and it's had a long shelf life. Spread sells well, but it doesn't sell that. And the thing is, and this is kind of inside baseball, as you might expect, making this hardcovers is expensive. Now, I don't have to pay that out of pocket, but still, you need to sell X number of them just to cover the cost of printing them, because they're just expensive. And so we need to be sure that we are going to make that back in some sort of reasonable time frame because we don't want to like not make any money off the Spread, especially since we haven't made any money on the singles in a while to speak of. So it depends. If Spread trade sales are strong and continue to be strong, I'm by no means against it, but it's purely an economic thing. I really like doing the hardcovers. The Luther Strode one turned out awesome. So I would do that for all my books if I could. It's just a matter of whether or not we can make it work.
Yeah, I mean, that Luther Strode collection is gorgeous. I remember I was at the New York show, and I actually was talking to, I helped Trad with the shipment. Like, they had just kind of come in, and I was like, I had never seen them before, and I was just like, this is fucking gorgeous.
Yeah, right? When I got the copies that they sent to me, I was like, holy shit, book is awesome. I was really impressed at how it ended up looking. It was better than I ever could have imagined. I'm deeply pleased with how that went. And thankfully, that sold well, so that turned out to be a roll of the dice that's worked for us.
I don't know if you remember this. I actually interviewed you guys for the magazine and kind of like a post game for the series. You had mentioned that Luther Strode kind of has connected with fans in a big way. What do you think the appeal of Luther Strode with the, what makes that character and that title really stand out?
Trad's art. It's not just that, but having Trad more on art is very handy for that kind of thing. His Ghost Rider run, I think, gets a lot of like kind of fandom love because of that too. Otherwise, I don't know. I could speculate that it's probably the combination of the characters and and Trad's art. But honestly, on that book, that was one of those books where we're all working on all cylinders, and Trad and Felipe Sobrero, the colorist, and I all really work well together. We have what we call the hive mind, and so the books we have put out, that stuff has always been better than I think any of us could do individually. I think the synergy of it really works. So I think there's just some sort of X factor that's kind of resonated with people. If it was something that I could replicate routinely, I would. But thus far, it's by far the most popular of my books, and it's the thing that I'm most known for, which is fine because it's probably one of the best things that I've written.
One of the, speaking of writing, you mentioned in one of the back columns of Family Trade, you're not necessarily the biggest fan or biggest proponent of characters writing themselves, but with Luther Strode, Petra got a bigger role than she was originally intended. Over in Family Trade, Ree's got a bigger role than originally intended. What would you say, has that experience kind of happened in Death of Love or any of the DC Marvel work? And what would you say it is about, Ree or Petra that really suddenly as a writer you're like, oh, there's a lot more mileage. There's a bigger role than I originally thought.
That's a good question. I've had characters do that before in other works, and it's kind of the way it's not just sassy female women, females that do it. It's because there's Fat Jack in Spread. Also kind of does that. You just put them in a situation and he sort of takes over. I don't know. It's just that some characters just you hear their voice really distinctly, and it gets really easy to write for them. And in the case of certainly in Petra and Ree's case, like they really serve to as a bolt-on motor for the plot. It's really easy because they do stuff and they're active and proactive, and they are always kind of. They run off the mouth to a certain extent, which makes it easy for other characters to bounce off of them, and I think it just makes the writing process easier. I think in the process of writing Death of Love, it became much more of an ensemble book than I was necessarily anticipating it being when I was first starting out doing the plotting and stuff for it. Bob, Philo's best friend, and Zoe, his erstwhile kind of love interest, were always in the book and always had a fairly major role. But it turns out they ended up driving the plot more than Philo did once everything kind of got kicking, just because they're, in the case of those two, what actually helps them make the plot go is that they are not selfish characters. So whereas Philo might be like, fuck this, I'm out of here, that you guys can deal with this, they are not willing to do that to Philo, which is to his benefit within the story and to mine as a writer.
Yeah. You don't have to spend too much time in that headspace and try to justify all the crazy shit he does.
Yeah.
Something else I've kind of noticed, Spread is very much a book of characters on the run, with No and everybody, and you get that now with where the stakes are with the Family Trade with Jessa, without going into exactly what's happened to Jessa as of issue 3, but it's very clearly that she's Harrison Ford in The Fugitive now, but the Is that kind of what we're going to see with Philo's course in Death of Love? Or is he really going to be taking the fight himself? Or is he kind of going to be on the ropes a bit more?
No, he's going to be on the ropes. I think I like writing underdog characters. I think it's easier to write characters when they are not the most powerful ones. It's the Superman problem is that kind of thing. It's fun to write them being on the run because then you get to have people kind of surviving by their wits and, desperation, moving the plot along and that kind of stuff.
With, you had mentioned Superman, and having said, Luther Strode in a way is kind of a Superman. The dude can fucking chop dudes' heads in half with his hand, and does. The, to kind of, and you wrote Superman. I remember one of my favorite moments in your run back during the New 52 is I forget who he was carrying, but he was like, hey, cover your ears, this can get loud, because he's about to do the super breath, and I was like, oh, I never thought about that before. Super breath would be loud as shit.
Yeah.
But when it comes to writing those kind of characters, you had mentioned you enjoy writing the underdogs. How is it writing the overdogs?
Overdog. I would take that. Yeah, no, it's fun. It's difficult. It's one of those things where, like when I wrote New Guardians, I did 20 odd issues of New Guardians, which was starring Kyle Rayner, when Kyle Rayner was the White Lantern, which meant that he had all the powers of every Green Lantern ring, which means he is vastly powerful. And so when you're doing that, those kind of books, you start to have to consider, like, all right, this character can basically do anything. So what is the challenge to them? And in Kyle's case, it was always a matter of what is the right way to use this power? Not can I do this? It's how do I do it? What is because as we've learned in real life, right? Like we have the U.S. military, which can reasonably kick the ass of any military in the world because we spend 10 times as much money on it as anyone. And there are very few problems we probably couldn't bomb back into the Stone Age, except that doesn't actually solve problems. It ends up being that same way with Superman as well. I think, I only wrote Superman for a little bit, just a short story and stuff. But when you're writing Superman in general, I think the trick is Superman always has to triage. Superman can probably solve any problem, but he can't solve all problems. And I think you've got to take that kind of as the core of Superman. And you want to try to write stuff that actually challenges them and stuff, but not in ways that necessarily like neuter the characters. Nobody's really reading Superman to see Superman brought down to normal every issue. And it's the same way with that. So writing vastly powerful characters it tends to be challenging. It's probably more challenging than writing the underdog characters, just because of that. You need to have the characters are so powerful that they can do anything, which kind of limits your hands as to what you can do with them in a sort of paradoxical way. Whereas underdog characters who are on the run, you kind of get it's kind of an easier row to hoe.
With someone, writing something like Luther Strode, where he becomes Super Strode, really within the first miniseries, was that kind of something as the series progressed you became more comfortable with by the end of the series, or was it always just kind of keeping an eye on the heart of the character and everything he's lost and everything he fights for?
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things of sort of scaling up the fights and stuff too. I mean, we always did try to keep a really close eye on whether we were staying true to the emotional roots of the character, and that's kind of the stuff that makes the series work, and I think probably makes every good story work is that. But when we were doing with Luther, you'll notice that as you go through the 3 miniseries, like the level of the threats that he is fighting continually increases until he eventually gets to Kane. Yeah, Luther, by the time he's in the Legacy of Luther Strode, would have ended the fight with the Librarian in about 0.7 seconds. So he's kind of a different guy. So we kind of tried to keep adding different things to it. And it's the same way with Luther Strode. We were essentially writing a fight comic, right? So you need to not make your fights too repetitious, and so you needed to kind of scale up what you were doing all the time. So we tried to vary it. One of the reasons in Legacy of Luther Strode, we had various combinations of abilities. We had somebody who was stronger than Luther, and somebody who used guns, and multiple opponents, and somebody whose powers were non-physical, and that kind of stuff. Just, try to keep that going. And it's also, aside from the fact that the story is done, it's one of the advantages of only having to write 18 issues of Luther Strode is that we can do that. If you have to write 1,000 issues of Batman or Superman, you either need to find 1,000 different iterations of that stuff, or eventually kind of start repeating yourself.
Speaking of the mainstream work, you've got 2 DC books coming out. You're doing Monsters Unleashed over at Marvel. I don't know if did you want to kind of tease anything with those 2 new DC books, and what to expect and everything? I'm co-writing Sideways with Dan DiDio, and we've got Kenneth Rockford on art, and that is actually one of the more. I'm apparently entering the sunny disposition phase of my career, because Sideways is very much a optimistic, sort of pleasant book. His character is happy to be a hero, wants to be a hero, and is enjoying the hero life, and it's not notably grim or gritty. On the other hand, Curse of Brimstone absolutely is, because it's about a kid who wants to make his town great again,
and so basically makes a really unwise deal with a devil-like character and ends up, well, you can see what the title of the book is. So, But it's the same way with Monsters Unleashed. Monsters Unleashed is a very cheerful, kind of lighthearted book. Probably easily the most of my career, actually. I think I probably not wrote another book that's as fun and lighthearted as Monsters Unleashed has ended up being.
You're kind of in the joyous period, the spring period, if we're going by art.
Yeah.
Well, Family Trade is pretty, optimistic and stuff too. There's not any kind of murder or bloodshed to speak of in it, and that kind of stuff. And the character keeps getting out of these scrapes without losing everything she ever held dear, which is probably an improvement over many of my books. So,
with that book, I mean, you've got Morgan kind of doing this like very beautiful watercolor style. You've got, you're co-writing it with Nikki. How is that, what made you want to take on a co-writer for that book? And two, what was it about Morgan's art that made it perfect for the Family Trade?
Well, the Family Trade, it's kind of we call it ocean punk, as you know, but it's kind of a steampunky sort of aesthetic. And really, once we had the idea, I was like, oh, we got to see if Morgan will do it, because Morgan's kind of watercolory, flowy thing does that. And plus, it's a watercolor thing, and it's a book, set on the water, and that tends to work well. So we got really lucky. And we've been wanting to work together for a long time. I've known Morgan for 5 or 6 years now. And so this just happened to be an opportunity where we could actually get together, and she's really knocked it out of the park. I wanted to do a book that didn't look like anything else in the direct market, and I think Morgan's art is probably unmistakable for anyone else's. The co-writing came about because the basic idea for it was, I was joking around with Nikki about her family being a family of assassins, because they make a lot of what I would consider to be poorly explained travel decisions. So she's like, yeah, it's the Family Trade. And then we were like, what if there was, a family of assassins? And we started, thinking about that and kind of kicking the idea around. And Nikki has a lot of talent as a writer. She doesn't have the sheer amount of practice that I have, because I've been doing this for a while. So we decided to co-write together, and it's gone really well. I think we've gotten a much different and much better book than we would have had if we had either of us written it separately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
And it's worked out really well, so I am happy.
Was it, to kind of carry the art question, what made Donald the right choice for Death of Love? Other than I guess it all came from a piece of his art too. Indeed.
That was the number one thing. You're like, you did a really good job, man, so I'm going to get somebody else entirely to draw it. Cool? Donald has a very kind of cartoony style, not super stylized, but there's this hint of like kind of that like Tex Avery energy and stuff to it, and a little bit of the same kind of vibes that Trab would tap into and stuff. And given the subject matter, I thought that was the right kind of approach to take with the art. And it's actually proved to be one of those decisions that was accidentally really smart on my part, which is how I kind of blunder in and through life, because Donald is one of the artists that we work really well together. I left to my own devices, I'm kind of a very Spartan sort of writer in my scripts and stuff. There's usually only, I don't detail page layouts, and I don't go into like angles in my panels. And for the most part, you get that kind of John Wagner dread punches dude kind of descriptions of things. And that works out better with some artists than others. I've been really lucky in that it has mostly worked out for me. But Donald is one of those cases where he takes kind of the basic concept of the page and comes out with some really innovative sort of layouts, or he'll play with like sound effects on the page. There's this one part where Zoe is whacking a cupidae with a baseball bat, and the speed line things out from it spell the sound effect line drive, which we all found deeply amusing. So stuff like that. And that's stuff that I didn't necessarily know he would do going in. I liked his work and that kind of stuff, but he's really worked well and elevated the story and made me look good, which is also always what I want out of an artist, is making me look at least competent. But good would be better.
Of course. Always the goal. As an aside, you had mentioned John Carpenter earlier, loving The Thing. As the show is always about tangent, everything I do is about the tangents. Is The Thing the last time you were on? I remember we talked about John Carpenter's Halloween and how you found Mike Myers. No, everybody misses the kind of sense of humor that Mike Myers has. What is your favorite John Carpenter film?
Oh, The Thing, I think. It's that or Halloween. They're kind of close ones, and that's the thing is like, so you asked that question, and those are probably the correct answers. But John Carpenter really had a fucking golden age there, where he churned out in less than a decade. It was Halloween, The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China, and Escape from New York, and some other good movies, mind you. But like certainly those four, and those are somewhere in my top 10 movies of all time collectively. So, he's kind of overloaded that system. But I think ultimately it's The Thing. I think The Thing does what it does so well. And it's one of those things like, so I'll watch The Thing, and obviously I've seen it however many times now. And like, yeah, I know the guy's chest is going to burst open and bite the guy's arm off of, and I still jump. Like, this level of, like, aside from anything else about it, the level of craftsmanship into constructing a film to make that work continuously when you already know what's happening is sort of astonishing to me. So I think probably The Thing is my favorite Carpenter film.
It's the same with this the scene where he's checking the blood and he hits the heat on the blood and it just jumps up out of his hand. It always gets me too, even though I know it's coming. Same with the stomach chomp.
And that stuff's actually so. What Carpenter does there, and this is not an insight from me, although I wouldn't know who to attribute it to because I heard it on a television show a long time ago. But I have realized that they are entirely correct. What Carpenter does is, especially in a lot of those early movies, and especially in The Thing, he does it a lot in The Fog too, actually, which is kind of considered a lesser film, but he sets this sort of almost metronomic pacing to the way the scenes are edited, like the length of shots and that kind of stuff. And then when something happens, he disrupts it. It comes out of the rhythm the movie's already established in a really way that's hard to notice. I don't think that insight would have ever occurred to me on my own. But I realized that to a certain extent, you can apply that to comics as well if you establish the right kind of rhythm in how your pages are going and how your panels are arranged. You can break that rhythm for effect. So it's one of those things where it's one of the reasons I recommend to people that are aspiring writers to get interested in film and books, because you can learn things that you can kind of apply to that stuff. And I've actually seen that. I don't know that he did it intentionally. But there was this. It was an issue of Ultimate Spider-Man that Bendis was writing, and what eventually was leading to was the reveal of their version of the Hobgoblin. But either him or Mark Bagley, because this is when Bagley was illustrating it, if he didn't illustrate the entire run, which I don't remember if he ever stopped, had these panels in such a precise thing that when you turn the page, it actually was legitimately startling in a way that comics rarely accomplish, and I don't know that I ever have. Despite what I'm just telling you, I attempt it. It's one of those things that's something that I would not have learned if it weren't for obsessive watching of The Thing and analyzing why John Carpenter's stuff works.
I feel like Spread, in terms of pacing, and obviously there's Thing parallels there. I feel like Spread probably has the most pull you out of that rhythm feel of any of your books. Luther Strode certainly has some of those moments too.
Totally.
But definitely, as a series as a whole, I would say Spread is largely built on that rhythm.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and I was trying. Like that's a direct result of that kind of insight about The Thing. So I wasn't just ripping off some of that stuff about The Thing. I was going deep with my homaging.
There's another thing, just real quick, speaking of that blood scene, and again, this is not something that I came up with. It's something that I saw on some TV show or IMDb trivia or something, commentary, that I think is a great thing that you're kind of talking about, Justin, with like the pacing, is that whole scene, even when you're watching it, I mean, even, you've seen it a million times, what happens, But one of the great things with like a kind of like a trick with the pacing that he does that I've always loved is like we see Kurt Russell holding the Petri dish, you know, and he's like, you know, getting ready for it. And there's that scene where they change the hand to the dummy hand. And I think most filmmakers would have changed the scene to the dummy hand the moment the blood jumps. But he does it like a couple tests before. So your brain gets used to seeing the dummy hand. So you're like, oh, well, maybe it'll jump now. Why isn't, you know, maybe, okay, why is it there? And then when you finally settle into it, then it does go off. And I think that's one of another kind of like really great John Carpenter thing that you see in The Thing. You know, that I've all like every time I'm always like, I love that those little touches of that with disrupting the pacing. It's so great.
That's the thing. It's just all throughout his early career, especially. That's like in Halloween, like, and I don't know how much of this was actually like sort of a budget thing, but there's so much stuff you're actually just flat out not shown in Halloween that is way more evocative than what he ever could have shown you. Like, just rolling up to an insane asylum in the middle of the night during the rain, and people are just fucking wandering outside. Like,
yeah.
There's
That's
no
so
version
creepy.
of showing us what led up to that will ever be any better than what you've got in your head. And it's the same way with, like, the couple of scenes where something's happening and the camera, like, slowly pulls back and you see the fucked up thing that the person that was in the scene didn't see.
Kind of, playing with the frame and everything, which is probably where like what Rob Zombie maybe didn't accomplish as well. Because that was my problem with, I never needed a detailed origin story for Michael Myers. He just is.
He is, and it's one of those things that, man, we are going into the tangent weeds now. With the Rob Zombie Halloween, which I don't dislike, but it's one of those things that, like, it is. So in the original Halloween movies, there's basically Michael Myers from the first Halloween, and then there's Michael Myers from the sequels, and they're not quite the same kind of character. Like, the sequel, Michael Myers does not have that same sadistic sense of humor, and they start explaining things, and he really does become much more of a generic kind of stalker, or not stalker, slasher. In the first movie, he's kind of not that. And so in the Rob Zombie Halloween movie, they basically go for the big brutal slasher thing, which I think kind of misses the point of why you would want to make another Halloween movie, is to get that thing that makes him different than a Jason Voorhees or any other slasher. The other thing that didn't work for me about Halloween is that it's one thing if you want to explain why Michael Myers is shitty, but the movie doesn't actually do that. Like, there's no connection between the sociopathic child and the fucking silent, brutal Hulk. Like, there's just, he is as inexplicable as the first one while not being as interesting, which I was like, if you're going to actually try to, like, Freudian excuse that shit, like, do it. Like, you know, have at it.
Yeah. Kind of, actually dig in. So, Justin, I don't know if you remember, but something we ask everybody that comes on the show, what are you currently geeking out over, man?
Oh, what am I currently geeking out over? Probably Star Wars.
Did you dig The Last Jedi?
I did. I have reservations about it. I didn't hate it, and I didn't love it to the extent that some people did. There were chunks of that movie that I really loved, and there were chunks of it that, even having seen it twice now, I just don't think worked. But I have thought about it and talked about it more than maybe anything else I had consumed in any kind of media in 2017, including my own work. So, like, I think that probably qualifies as geeking out. I think the primal ability of a Star Wars movie to appeal to the child and geek in me has not lessened over time.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I definitely didn't love it, but I didn't, like, hate it. And so, question mark. But the funny thing is, like, I've talked, like you were saying, like, I've talked about that movie more than I think every Star Wars movie combined in my 31 years on this planet. Like, and I've had some really great conversations about it with, like, people who've loved it and people who've really hated it. Like, it's definitely caused discussions, which is what.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing. It's like, it's not like I've been having, like, miserable nerd rage filled discussions.
Sure.
Like, I've had good discussions about it, and, like, way more than I had about Force Awakens or Rogue One. Like, so, you know, I think that alone means the movie does something. You know what I mean? Like, criticisms of it notwithstanding, any movie that, you know, is worth discussing for weeks afterwards is something as a movie that has done something right.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
It's definitely a challenging film, I think,
Mm-hmm.
or at least it challenges preconceptions about what Star Wars is.
It does, and it's one of those things where I liked it more on the second go because I knew what was coming.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those occasions where I don't think spoilers would have helped, but it's when they talk about people like things more when they have spoilers. Like, yeah, when I knew what was coming, the parts of it that were tedious to me were less tedious. As a writer, I still have objections to them that are, in as much as things are objective, I think they're like legit criticisms. But knowing what was coming actually made them less annoying than they were to me when I was because there were chunks of that movie where I'm just antsy in my seat. I'm like, yeah, get back to the Force users because that's the only part of this movie that I'm really getting into.
Still on the casino planet. Damn.
Well, the other part of it was, and I'm trying not to be too spoilery, like,
Of course.
there's a whole chunk of it that's like a chase scene that has like zero tension. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, honestly, like, I don't know if there was anything saving Canto Bite for me, but like certainly the chase scenes, if they were just, and Rian Johnson is a good director and he can do tension. I don't know why it's not there, but it isn't. Like, I compare it to, of all things, the first episode of Battlestar Galactica's ongoing show, the new one, is the episode 33, which is basically they're jumping through space and the Cylons are catching them every 33 minutes. And they can't stop. They've been doing this for like a day and a half and everybody is exhausted and they're fraying and people are falling apart. That's what that chase scene should have been like. I realize that's not super Star Wars-y, but the way it was done, like, it's just dull. I'm like, there's no stakes here. Like, I get that I'm being told what's at stake, but I don't feel it on the screen. And so I was bored, which is not what I'm looking for in a Star Wars movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just kind of like, yeah, where's the thrill there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it kind of was like Dunkirk in space for me. At a certain level. But yeah, so Justin, before we return you to the wilds of Pennsylvania, what can we is there anything you want to plug or any last words on? God, I mean, you're writing so much. Like these. Though I guess you finished, like you said, you finished Spread like 7-8 months ago. But yeah, any last plugs for Death of Love or Spread?
Death of Love comes out on Valentine's Day, and it's kind of me having a really violent, bloody romp, making fun of both romantic comedies and men's rights activist types, which I think is always worth doing.
Oh yeah.
And then I've got the first trade of the family trade is confusing, but beyond that, the first trade comes out in March. The last trade of Spread comes out in April, and people will be able to get a complete story of that. And then I've got DC and Marvel projects, and I've got several greenlit things beyond the horizon about that I can't talk about yet. But yes, buy Death of Love, I think, would be the takeaway from that.
Yes, Valentine's Day and retailers. The FOC final order cutoff is January 22nd. So yeah, order up. Justin, thanks again for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no problem at all. Lovely time every time.
Oh, yeah.
Justin comes on. Again, Death of Love out on Valentine's Day. You can pre-order at your local comic book shop. Final order cutoff is Monday. Gents, what did you get into?
I saw... Oh, wait, Sam, what did you get into?
This is going to be a thing now, is it, Jake?
I forgot about it till halfway through. I said, what'd you get into, man? I know what I got into.
What's today, the 10th?
Oh, yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's all kind of blended together at this point.
Right on, man.
It's all just a dream.
I wish, man. No, it's, I don't really think it's just been busy. I'm back at work,
After that long winter vacation of yours.
like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The, looking up Australian slang. Hey, we have listeners in Australia. Not a whole hell of a lot. admittedly.
But Australians, perk your ears up.
Do you know what our biggest international market is?
Qatar?
No.
I know. We have listeners in Qatar.
We do. Our biggest international market, Japan.
Yeah.
Nice.
Or as they would say, Jotoda.
Oh.
I would say domo arigato.
Yes, I think we should all say domo arigato to our Japanese listeners.
Yeah.
But Australian listeners, which also exist, not to the same level as Japan, just saying.
Come on, Australia. Pick it up.
What does Darrison mean? I want to know so bad what that slang term means.
So we all kind of went down a rabbit hole. Sam came to us today before recording.
Crisis of faith.
Yeah. Just boggled by this word. And so naturally, me being the curious fellow that I am, I started looking it up. And I found a whole slew of Twitter hashtag Darrison, and trying my best as a linguist, untrained linguist, to figure out what it was. And the best I can figure, or the best American analog, was like fuckboy or just some vague form of like idiot. They're basically the same thing. Yeah. Just fuckboy is a very specific kind of idiot. 2
Darrisons, 1 car.
But yeah, so give me more specifics.
Yeah, I we looked up Australian slang sites over dinner. It's so recent a term that I don't know what it means.
Yeah. And like at first I was like, well, maybe it's like something that's like super colloquial. It's something that like only this group, the group that you were looking at, and you're like, no. There's lots of examples of it. And then like I said, I found a whole bunch of examples. I was like, okay, this is not just, a click term.
Yeah, it's not an in-joke as far as I know.
Yeah.
It's an actual...
Well, it's an in-joke to Australians.
Yeah, to an entire nation.
Yeah. I'm sure, even if we don't know, I'm sure we have some sort of equivalent in joke that international audiences that don't understand.
I saw
Darrisons.
I think I talked about Lady Bird last time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I saw I, Tanya.
Oh, I really want to see that.
It is
with your main
Squeeze,
lady,
Allison Janney.
Yeah.
Everyone thought I was going to say Margot Robbie.
Nah, your main Sheila.
I mean, we knew.
That's an Australian term that I do know.
I do love Margot Robbie though too, but again, much in keeping.
Margot Robbie's Australian.
Yeah.
Oh, let's ask her.
Yeah. Much in keeping with The Shape of Water and Lady Bird, the performances in this movie are fucking stellar. The performances in this movie are Darrison.
Yeah, Margot Robbie, you were Darrison.
Yeah, you were Darrison
in I,
in this.
Tanya.
The thing is, though,
watch it be some really heinous word, and all the people in Australia are just like, I can't listen to
ignorance
this
is
show
bliss. Ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is Darrison.
If anything, we have proven that we have no idea what this word is.
That's right. That's right.
I think beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, because if we knew and it was really bad, we wouldn't be spouting all over the place. No, anyway, a lot of the trailers and stuff for the movie portray it as kind of like dark comedy.
Yes.
I wouldn't say that. I think some like Allison Janney's character at times is funny, and there's one moment she has that's very laugh out loud funny. But I left the theater like amazed that Tanya Harding did anything with her life. And I mean that I mean that in the sense that this is a person who was beaten down and treated like shit by every single person who was supposed to love her. It's insane. I mean,
believe it. If I remember correctly, that's very accurate.
And there's a couple moments that will hit you in the gut because the movie is framed with these modern day interviews with like Tanya Harding, her ex-husband,
actual.
No.
Actor portrayal.
Actor portrayal.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I think there were actual interviews that they based them on.
Mm-hmm.
But Allison Janney and like her skating coach. But there's like I don't want to spoil it, but there's a moment where Tanya Harding basically turns the table on the audience, and you're like, holy shit. I'm not excusing some of the behavior because the movie also doesn't as well.
Yeah. A
lot of the time she doesn't take responsibility for a lot of things. But also I think, again, take it all with a grain of salt because this isn't a documentary. This is a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But even if a couple like 50% of this is true. What she went through, which according to the what the movie research I guess it had, she didn't have nearly as much as say like the husband in The Bodyguard, and she was of course the one who took the brunt of the hit for all of it and suffered being banned from skating and all this kind of stuff. But again, the movie does not portray her to be a total saint, and it nor should it.
Yeah.
But man, is it brutal. I mean, there are some brutal scenes with her, very intense, like domestic altercations, and domestic beatings that are pretty hard to watch, and as they should be, and they don't sugarcoat anything in this with that. But again, the miraculous thing is that she was able to become as great as a skater as she was, because I mean everybody just was just treated her like shit. And that she was able to make anything of her life was kind of amazing to me. She was the first American female to land the triple axel. In the movie, that move is still so dangerous that they had to recreate it with CG. Like, that's how tough that move is, because there are a couple of people in the world who could still do it, but they didn't want to do it because fear of potential injury and their actual careers. Right. Because someone, Margot Robbie wasn't played like hockey. So she skates at the basic stuff,
right? And
then
she's the Happy Gilmore of
yeah exactly. But it shows this isn't a dig on the movie, but you can clearly tell when it's not her,
right?
But they do their best with it, to show. But there's a lot of the key moments that you remember about the Tanya Harding story.
If I can watch the body doubles in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV show, I think I can handle.
No, I think you'll be fine. But again, the performances are strong, and like I said, there's also a really good documentary called The Price of Gold. I believe it's a 30 for 30 that those great ESPN documentaries. But yeah, I mean, just how brutal her life was, and able to make something of it is pretty amazing. And I think it's getting people talking again and realizing that like all we had to go by was what the media was showing at the time with it. I'm sure there's a lot to it. I don't think she's the total saint with the whole thing, but it reignites an interest in that with new eyes that you haven't looked at before.
Takes me back to my childhood.
I remember when that went down, and that's and the anniversary was recent. I think it was January 6th. It was the anniversary of that happening.
That
so,
probably coincided with the release of the movie.
Yeah.
Ish.
So
wide.
I think it's worth checking out. It's worth checking out. But like I said, maybe you guys, if you see it, they have a different experience. But I remember thinking this isn't. I didn't like the humor was not there. I mean, some of the situations she gets into, but it's very much like very Goodfellas, where like. And they have a moment in the trailer where she fires the shotgun at her husband, and she's like, "This never happened, by the way." And like because it's all different stories, different takes on how it goes down. There's a moment where like they call it the incident, with what's her face, Nancy Kerrigan, and they show this scene where like Tanya Harding standing over top of her with like a baseball bat, beating her to like to death, and blood's all over her face, and like this is what people this is how people think would actually happen. Like I did this, blah blah blah. So they do that Goodfellas thing a lot in it.
I was gonna ask, because the trailer kind of I almost thought that it was gonna be like almost like a Ferris Bueller-y kind of take on it.
No,
with just straight up looking straight into the camera, breaking the fourth
that happens
wall.
Occasionally, but like I said, there's
it's mostly
they start dating, and it's like this very awkward love story, and then he's like punching her in the face and like smashing her head into mirrors and stuff, and you're like, gee. And I remember like the audience, like you could feel like, because there's that scene with Margot Robbie in The Wolf of Wall Street where Leo like gut punches her, and I remember that was one of those things where like it sucked the air out of the room, like when it happens. And just the movie's unflinching.
You felt everyone clench up at the same time.
I mean the movie's unflinching in that, and like I said, it's pretty intense. So
very cool. I got an email today from MoviePass, because I am a member, that was just like, hey, everybody loves I, Tonya. Like apparently I, Tonya is one of the most universally MoviePass movies right now, or something like that. And I don't to the point that they're even doing a special promotion if you go see it and buy tickets with the MoviePass card. I watched a almost 30-year-old film for the first time this past week. I've had the Laserdisc for The Fugitive for a while.
Shit.
And I
Kimball?
had never seen it, and I forget exactly what it was that made me think about it a couple days ago, but I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I own that movie. I should watch it.
Does that Scrubs episode change everything now, the way you watch it?
Yeah.
Kimball!
So literally halfway through the movie, I was like, where's the janitor?
Yeah. I love
know
that
he's in
episode
this movie.
so freaking much, man. It's one of my favorite episodes
Yeah.
of all time.
But yeah, so I cracked it open, watched it, and it was really good. It met all my expectations and exceeded some of them, because like all I really knew about
Oscar-winning Tommy Lee Jones performance.
Yeah. All I knew about the movie was that Harrison Ford is accused of killing his wife. The one-armed man did it. And the entire movie is about him running away from Tommy Lee Jones. And like that's literally all
And
I
Jane
knew.
Lynch is in it. I always
She
forget
is.
that. When I watch it, I always forget that.
When she popped up, I was like, holy shit, Jane Lynch
Yeah.
is in this?
Yeah.
And I would not be surprised if that, as well as like, well, I wouldn't be surprised if that's like the one role that like nobody knows that she had.
Mm-hmm.
Much like if that episode of Scrubs had never happened, no one would know that. It's not Sam Neill, Neil Flynn.
Nice.
Yeah, right. The janitor, Neil Flynn. It would be the same thing. Like because that episode of Scrubs happened, everyone knows that he's in.
Well, that
Fugitive.
scene is so different now.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause I'm like, there's the scene from Scrubs.
But one of the things that I wanted to get to is like I had no idea how much. I don't want to say espionage, but like how much like fucking like little spy shit is in the movie, because like Harrison Ford's character like makes a fake ID so that he can.
He's like a doctor,
infiltrate.
right? A surgeon.
Yeah, he's a surgeon, but he like makes a
Dr. Richard Kimball.
makes a fake ID so that he can infiltrate this hospital that makes prosthetic arms, so he can track down who the one-armed man is. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And now I want to check out the TV show that it's based on.
You gonna watch? Have you seen the sequel, U.S. Marshals?
No, I have not. I do know.
Wesley Snipes.
According to Wikipedia, it is a spin-off, not a sequel.
Well, it's got Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah.
Same character.
Well, that's
and
like,
Joe Pantilio.
the way that when I read that, I was like, huh, okay, I guess yeah, a sequel. You would think that it would follow Harrison Ford's further exploits.
It just follows him being happy and not in jail.
Yeah, missing his wife.
Yeah.
But maybe starts hanging out with Julianne Moore. But yeah, so yeah, since it follows Tommy Lee Jones's character, I guess that's why Wikipedia decided it's a spin-off instead of a sequel.
Also, the famous "I didn't kill my wife, I don't care"
Yeah,
is supposedly ad-libbed by
Yeah.
Tommy Lee Jones.
I heard that.
That's
as
a
well.
great. That's a great character moment too.
I think
'cause he
that
doesn't
might-
care about that. His job is to bring in Kimball.
I think that might be what it was. I forget. Recently, I was watching like one of those What Culture, like top 10 times that something happened videos.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the points, I don't even remember what the category was, but one of the points was that iconic line was improvised. That's actually that might have been what the list was. Top 10 improvised lines that changed everything, or whatever clickbaity title they were using.
Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones is great in that, man.
Yeah, he was so good. I'm so glad that I finally watched it. Kind of upset that I waited so long to do it.
That's why it's there.
But the train wreck was in beautiful CAV quality.
Nice.
Then the rest of the movie was in CLV.
Nice.
Not that that means anything to most people.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm
a little sad that the second side. Here's something for you laser dicks out there. The second side had a little bit of laser rot, so the audio was horrible, but still able to understand everything that was, making noises though.
That's good.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, I love this scene where Tommy Lee Jones is like getting all the people together. Like, we're gonna go here. You do this. You do this. Blah, 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 you do this. That's like the Oscar moment.
That's what. Yeah, you got it for it.
Yeah. Granted,
Yeah.
it should have gone to Ray Fiennes for Schindler's List, but that's okay. I'm on Gert. His performance
Yes.
was stunning.
One of the all-time great villainous portrayals.
Potentially the all-time great
villainous
roles.
Yes.
Portrayals.
But Tommy Lee Jones is really good in that movie.
You know who really turned in a really fantastic?
Who?
Liam Neeson is Qui-Gon Jinn.
Oh my god, dude! Let me tell you,
I love Qui-Gon.
Oh shit!
Love
I love
Qui-Gon.
Qui-Gon. So I was driving in my car, and this guy was like tailing my ass. Right, it just wouldn't fucking quit. And so I look in my mirror, and he's just on my ass, and I'm going, just go around.
Yeah.
Go the fuck around, right? And so finally he goes around. I look over, and
It's Liam Neeson.
he's got a beard and long hair, and I was like looks like this. He looks back, and I hear he mouths, and he goes, Qui-Gon Jinn, and I go, right? And then it was a great drive to work. Nobody else tailgated me because he just he guided me the whole way because Qui-Gon Jinn, and his license plate said Darth Maul.
No, your enemy.
I don't believe any of that.
And his
happened.
bumper sticker said, "My other ride is a Millennium Falcon." And he had a little Chewbacca hanging from his thing.
Qui-Gon Jinn was never on the Millennium.
It doesn't matter. He's a Star Wars fan. I didn't say it was Qui-Gon Jinn, because if it was Qui-Gon Jinn, I would have lost my shit, because I love Qui-Gon Jinn.
Love.
I don't know if I can stress to you the importance and love I have for Qui-Gon Jinn.
Love Qui-Gon Jinn. Love Qui-Gon Jinn.
He's so good.
Love him.
He dies pretty easily.
Yes.
He just gets
Stabbed.
punched in the face and
Like
stabbed.
any true Jedi.
Yeah.
And he's
That's
the
right,
guy.
I said it, nerds.
And he's the guy that's like, train him, train this horrible boy.
He'll kill us all.
He'll bring balance to the force. And it's 40 years later, Ghost Qui-Gon is up in Jedi heaven, and he sees him pick up the Emperor, and no one else is watching. He's like, guys, get the fuck. Look, I fucking told you.
Yoda.
I fucking told you. And they're like, really? We're going to the Force Moon of Endor. You have to stay here, you little prick. You fucking prick. Because we don't love you, Qui-Gon Jinn.
We're gonna go party with some Ewoks.
Yeah.
Prick
Yub
Gon
nub
Jinn.
this bitch.
Yeah.
To me, it's always yub nub.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
good.
It's a good one. It's a good
Yeah.
one. Could have used more
Qui-Gon Jinn. There's that one Ewok that does the David Lee Roth splits. Remember that? He jumps up. He's like, you gotta do is jump, and he jumps and does the power stance with his feet. I'm like, all right. I mean, I would too, I guess. Oh, I started playing real quick. I started playing Battlefront 2.
Can you be Qui-Gon Jinn?
I don't know yet, but if you can, you'll hear it here first. You're a special ops Imperial TIE fighter man. No, you're not a man at all. Jesus, you're
Janina Gavankar.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and you're on the Force Moon of Endor, trying to clean up, and you see the Death Star explode. It's kind of cool, from their point of view, and you're like, let's fuck shit up. It's pretty cool. I'm enjoying it so far because it has an actual campaign.
Yeah.
Which is pretty sweet.
Okay.
But I'll let you know if Qui-Gon shows up.
From my internet searches, no.
Well, I will not be playing Battlefront 2 anymore.
Time to go to GameStop and get $5 for it.
I got it digitally, so no money.
You know, I got a PS4 for Christmas. Still in the box. Just haven't had the time, guys. Haven't had the time. Also,
Must be nice.
yeah, yeah.
No, that actually sounds terrible. Not having the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What can I do?
I don't know.
Not watch Qui-Gon Jinn? Not play as Qui-Gon Jinn? I'm still waiting.
Yeah. So am I still waiting?
Well, don't you have Lego Star Wars on Xbox 360?
Yeah.
You can play as Qui-Gon Jinn.
Oh,
What the fuck you doing?
Oh.
You had 2 weeks off from school, you fuck, and you could have been playing Qui-Gon every night.
huh?
The fuck?
The fuck do.
The fuck, dude. Remember that movie?
Oh yeah. Place
I actually
Beyond
kind
the
of like that
Pines?
movie. I actually kind of like that movie a lot. But the fuck, dude.
I had no idea that was from a movie because I never saw that.
Baby. It is.
'Kay.
The fuck, dude.
The Fadu.
The fuck do.
It's a good movie.
I thought you guys were
If
just
you
being
do not watch the
fuckboys.
trailer, if you've never seen the trailer for
Place Beyond
Place Beyond the Pines, don't watch the trailer because the first time I saw the movie, I'd seen the trailer thinking it was something else, and it's not that at all. So going cold.
I have seen the trailer, and that's why I didn't want to see
Oh.
Place Beyond the Pines
no
because it
cold.
looked boring.
Then
No
let the past die.
Okay, Kylo.
Kylo Jinn?
Kylo.
Qui-Gon Jinn?
I love him. Love Qui-Gon Jinn.
I wish he had offspring. Like there was like a
Like the band?
no. I wish there
And
was
no Dexter Holland.
I wish there was like a
But idle hands.
like a bastard Qui-Gon Jinn offspring running around.
Qui-Gon Finn.
Oh, cock.
There it is.
Maybe.
Hey man, who knows? Episode 9 opens up. The possibilities are literally
Ryan Johnson's trilogy. Hear me out.
yeah,
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Qui-Gon Jinn. If that's what 8 led to, tearing down everything to lead to Qui-Gon Jinn, I'm in.
So you tear down the past just to bring
Back the past.
yeah.
It's called subverting your reservations. That's what it's called. You know what I'm saying? You subverted your expectations. That's what you do, folks. You know, episode 7 brought to the lexicon the Mary Sue. Like, no one really used that before. I never really heard Mary Sue used before. And then episode 7 came out, and everyone's like, Mary fucking Sue. And then episode 8 came out, and everyone's like, subvert your expectations. That's become the thing that episode 8, subvert your fucking expectations. Yeah, well, that movie subverted your fucking tations. No one's used that phrase before except fucking douche smug dickholes. Sam? Sorry, bud.
I mean, to be fair, if there's one thing I know about Sam,
No, you know what I'm saying, though? Like, who used it that much? And now they're like, the reason the film is great is because it subverts your expectations. What does that mean, punk kid? Nothing.
you heard CinemaSins say it, so therefore you think it's really cool.
He challenges you.
It challenges you by literally not challenging you at all.
Oh,
It's like, hey, you want to know shit? You don't know shit. Hey, buddy, you want to figure out what's going to happen in the next one? Guess what? We don't know what happens in the next one, so now you can't figure out what happens in the next one. Expectations subverted.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 9, the great subverted expectation. And in the beginning, it just like rolls. It's like episode 9. It just says, fuck you. And the movie starts. Han Solo's alive again. Doesn't matter. Luke's alive again. Doesn't matter. Vader's alive again. Doesn't matter. Qui-Gon
Qui-Gon Jinn?
Jinn, still dead. Because subverted expectations.
Oh.
You've got subverted expectations. That's right, buddy.
Well, shit. Shiat.
So,
So thanks to Justin Jordan
yes,
for coming on.
and I hope your expectations have been subverted, boys and girls, because that's all that really matters in the end,
Yes.
is that your expectations are subverted. Subvert this.
Death of Love out on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, read that,
Yeah.
please.
It's a madcap good time. As far as we know, it doesn't have Qui-Gon Jinn, but it's a mad.
It could.
It
Our
could-
expectations could be subverted.
It could. Justin, you still have time. What if Donald drew
Little Qui-Gon?
Like just hit a Qui-Gon?
I'd be set.
I would buy tons of copies. Tons.
Go see The Last Jedi
Yeah.
in theaters.
Yes.
Go see Lady Bird. Go see The Shape of Water, and go see I, Tonya.
Yes. Yes. This has been another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
Darrison's fried chicken.
Thank you very much. Subvert your expectations.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual Catching Up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.